So good evening once again and welcome to the session on career options for CAs in industry. I thought a lot about the session and to give you a complete picture. So I've done about thousands of calls, one-to-one calls with chartered accountants, and this presentation is a result of those questions that I got from young chartered accountants, and the most common questions we'll try to address in this session as well. So first of all, thank you for your trust. In this age of overloading of free webinars and training sessions, you have taken out your valuable 60 minutes to spend time here and understand something new. So thank you for your trust, and pat yourself on the back for taking action, because many people do register. Like I said, over 100 people have registered for this session, and I'm sure only about 30-40 will turn up, right? So pat yourself on the back for taking action and attending this session. So do stay through till the end of the session. And if you have any questions, we can, of course, address them at the end of the presentation as well. A little bit about me. I'm a qualified chartered accountant. I've also completed my one-year executive general management program from IIM Ahmedabad. 11 years of industry experience across diverse industries like software, oil and gas. Currently, I'm working with advertising and PR industry. I consider myself a sincere student of personal development. I always try to keep learning new things and keep investing in myself through coaching programs and training programs to keep upgrading myself. I have mentored hundreds and hundreds of chartered accountants through one-to-one calls, through my training programs, through LinkedIn articles, and all of that. Over the past 2 years, I have been an online instructor. I'm happy to share that more than 3,500 finance professionals have taken the benefit of the free training programs and these kind of training sessions that I keep conducting every now and then. And you can find all of them on my website, which is called trainforcorp.com, where you had actually registered for this session as well. So like I said, I keep doing a lot of mentoring and training initiatives. I've published over 40 LinkedIn articles. I keep posting regularly on LinkedIn. I've created a few free guides which have FAQs, that frequently asked questions that many chartered accountants and finance professionals have in their early days of their career. I've created video trainings. I've done over 1,000 one-to-one calls. I reserve my Saturdays for this and Sundays for this and try to attend as many calls as possible. So I started something called as Saturday Mentoring 3 years ago, where I started randomly posting on LinkedIn that, hey, I'm available for a call on Saturday if you want to speak to me. And that just kind of snowballed into a big initiative, which ended up being a dedicated website, a training session. I published over 40 plus articles, over 1,000 calls, 3 or 4 mini guides, a few interviews, all of that stuff. It kind of snowballed into a big initiative. I'm still continuing with that. I'm happy to share that more and more people have started joining the Saturday Mentoring initiative along with me as well. Also, I've also done about more than a dozen curated courses on my website, and I try to focus on guidance related courses and not really, if you want to learn like accounting standards or advanced Excel and all of that, you can find a lot of training programs and courses outside. But what's missing out there is guidance, the right kind of guidance for your career. That's what I have tried to focus on in all my courses that I've created on the website. Cool. So what is covered in this course? What will we cover in the next 45 minutes? So pay attention completely here. Right? We'll see and discuss 3 broad paths, career paths that are available for chartered accountants after you qualify. We'll understand the industry landscape, which are the different kind of organizations available out there and where you can end up working. And also understand the difference between consulting firms and industry. How is it like to work in a Big Four or a chartered accountancy firm versus how is it like to work in industry. We'll also touch upon the pros and cons of the global outsourcing industry. Many of you might get offers from these global shared services centers or offshore centers or Big Fours or any other company. So let's understand some pros and cons of working in a global outsourcing setup as well. So these are the 4 things that we'll be covering in today's session. So to begin with, the 3 parts. Now, before you choose any specific profile, so first of all, there are like hundreds and thousands of different kind of profiles out there, right? So which one is for you? Which one has the best future? So you might be having hundreds of questions in your mind, but I would just rather suggest you to calm down, take a step back and decide the broad path, the broad career path that you want to follow first. Okay, and then think about the specific profile. Now, the 3 broad career options, career paths that are available for chartered accountants after you qualify are: the first one is expert path. Here, you have deep interest in a particular subject and you want to be known as a subject matter expert. it could be direct taxes, it could be transfer pricing, it could be accounting standards, it could be GST, right? You have a deep liking towards a particular subject and you want to be known as a subject matter expert. In this case, the natural choice is that you work in those kind of firms, right? It could be Big Four, it could be any of the firms which are dealing in these kind of subject matter, and try and work there, gain some experience, and over the course of 8-10 years, you develop yourself as an expert, so much so that people are ready to pay top dollars for your time, right? That is the expert path. The second path is the generalist path. Now, in the generalist path, typically you start somewhere as a junior, a finance manager, assistant manager, analyst, financial analyst, account executive, something like that, finance executive. And you keep growing up to the ranks of becoming a manager, senior manager, deputy manager, general manager, VP, CFO someday. That's the generalist path. And the reason why I call it a generalist path is because if you look at a CFO, for example, CFO of a large company, he's not an expert in accounting standards, or he's not an expert in taxes or transfer pricing or any of that. But he knows just enough to put the right resources together and lead the business in a profitable direction. Okay? If you look at a CFO's position, everybody reports to him, right? The tax head reports to him, the legal head reports to him, the accounts head reports to him, right? The international taxation head guy reports to him, the internal audit guy might report to him, right? So a CFO that doesn't mean that CFO is an expert in all of these subject matters, but he has just enough knowledge to ask the right questions and take all this team along to create a successful finance function for a company. Okay? That's why I call it the generalist path. You need to understand a lot about people management and leadership and everything in this path as well, along with your subject matter expertise. And of course, understand the business. The third path is the technology path. Now, this is fairly new. Over the last 5 years, there have been so many new technologies that have come into play, right? It could be robotic process automation. It could be working on business intelligence tools like Power BI or SAP HANA, right? Or it could be working in SAP or Oracle, all of these things, right? Or even the latest things like artificial intelligence, machine learning. So technology has grown so much that it is trying to automate so many things, right? So here you act as a bridge between the business and the technology, the coder, the engineer, right? Because you understand business processes, so you can understand the business problems and then brief it to the technology guy to solve those problems, to create those coding, and then you test them, right? So you become a functional consultant. That's where you typically start, as a functional consultant, and you keep growing up to the ranks of becoming a senior as well in that. So these are the three broad paths. So if you're somebody who has that liking towards technology, if you're that person who has that deep interest in Excel, and everybody during your articleship used to come to you for those Excel problems, then maybe you have something for technology as well, right? So think about it, whether you want to be a subject matter expert or a generalist or a technology expert. Okay. Now, right now, you just need to have a broad understanding of the path that you want to take. It's okay if you become an expert for 5 years. If you, let's say, you select the expert path, work in taxation for 5 years, and decide that, no, maybe taxation is not for me, I want to move to the generalist path, that is possible. That is possible. There may be some realignments that you may have to do in terms of your pay, in terms of your profile, but that's fine. That's completely possible. It's not, no path is a dead end, okay? And no path needs to be written in stone right on day one. Okay, so you can select one path, okay, see how that path takes you. If you like it, continue. If you don't, then maybe you can switch paths and see where that takes you. Okay, so but roughly, these are the three broad paths that are available in front of you. So don't worry too much about the specific profile right now. Okay, broadly, you decide about the path that you want to take and then see what kind of opportunities you get. Next is, let's try and understand the industry landscape. Okay, and I got this nice image on the internet which kind of sums up the different kind of organizations which are available out there. Okay, so let's try and understand this chart a little bit. In the bottom quartile here, we can see this is the public accounting space. Here you have all your big fours, your chartered accountancy firms, your consulting firms. Okay, all of those things are located here. Your audit firms. So this is that classic chartered accountancy arena where you are basically involved in audit, accounts, tax, due diligence, transaction advisory, valuations, all the consulting stuff basically, which is done by big four or other chartered accountancy firms as well. So this is the public accounting space. The second option is this top quartile is for banks. Now again, In banks, there could be so many different functions. Now, banks are an ocean, right? There are so many different functions like commercial banking, sales, retail banking, investment banking, treasury, credit management, forex management. There are so many different kind of profiles within the bank itself, and you can join any one of the profile and keep growing up to the ranks. Okay, keep changing your profiles every 2-3 years. You will get an internal transfer, all that stuff, and you keep growing within the bank itself. Then the third quartile here, the top right quartile, is the financial institutions. Right? Here you have your private equity, your portfolio management companies, your equity research companies. So all of these things are located here. The wealth management companies. Those institutions are in this bucket. You can start with those kind of institutions as well. Again, as a junior analyst or something like that, and then keep growing up the ranks of becoming a partner, senior partner, or whatever that industry, the senior position in that industry is called. Then you have the fourth space, which is the regular corporates. This is your classic manufacturing service companies or a trading companies, okay, like a manufacturing company or an insurance company or a software company or something like that. Right? Here you have different finance functions within the corporate as well. It could be FP&A, business intelligence, treasury, accounting, investor relations, corporate finance. There could be hundreds of different departments depending on the size of the company as well. If it's a smaller size company, then a lot of functions could be overlapping. Okay? You might end up handling a variety of things in a smaller company. As opposed to that, in a very large company, your profile could be something very specific and you keep getting transfers every 2-3 years to some other department as well. So this is your classic corporates. Now, these are the 4 broad buckets in which you can classify all the kind of companies available out there where you want to apply for a job. Now, an interesting development has happened over the last 20-25 years. Okay? A parallel universe has been created. A similar parallel universe has been created in the KPO space. Yeah, knowledge process outsourcing industry, or even global shared services. Right? These are the terminologies that are used for the outsourcing industry. Okay. Now, you might join in a classic retail banking role in HDFC Bank, for example. Or you might join a JP Morgan in an outsourcing setup where you're actually handling accounting or reporting for some foreign entity or some foreign subsidiary in a global shared services center. Yeah. You can join, let's say, a classic equity research company like a Motilal Oswal in India. Okay. Or you might join a Merrill Lynch, the outsourcing shop of a Merrill Lynch, where you're actually trying to support on international clients. Yeah. So a parallel universe has been created. Similarly, instead of joining Deloitte, you might end up joining Deloitte USI, for example. Okay. Instead of joining, let's say, an L&T in a finance function, maybe you will join the outsourcing setup of an IBM or an Adobe. Okay, or something like a Shell, which is an oil and gas company, right? So you can join the global shared services setup of those kind of companies where people are doing, accounting and back office functions and IT support and whole lot of things, okay, for the international setup as well. Like I was also working with a certain company, which was a commodity trading company. It had operations in 80 countries, and we were doing all the accounting and budgeting and forecasting and everything sitting here in Mumbai for all those 80 countries. So there was a team which was handling statutory audit of South Africa. There was a team which was handling UK tax returns filing. Right? Everything was being done in India. Okay, and outsourcing is the future. We'll talk about the outsourcing industry in a separate section later in this session. Okay, but I just wanted to give you this visibility that when you look at the different kind of options and the companies available out there, okay, you also remember that it could be a traditional setup or it could be a global shared services setup as well. Okay, in the last 20-25 years, outsourcing industry has grown immensely. Okay, it has created never before kind of opportunities for chartered accountants. Okay, so this is the broad industry landscape. You might end up working in one of these broad buckets in one of the roles. Now, the consulting versus industry. So let's try and understand a little bit of difference here. When I mean consulting, what I mean by consulting is your big fours, your CF firms, or your specialty consulting firms like your Protiviti or your Hari Bhakti and all of these things, BDO, all of these things, right? So all these consulting firms or classic chartered accountancy firms, audit firms, taxation consulting firms, all of them, right? So whether this is for you or whether a classic manufacturing company or a trading or a services or a bank or financial services industry, global shared services. Is this space for you? So how do you decide which space is for you? And depends on your interest as well. So let me give you some indicators which will help you decide which space is for you. Should I work in Big Four or should I go and join finance function of Infosys, let's say, for example, right? So how do you decide? Let me give you some indicators. If you are liking the core chartered accountancy subjects, that is your accounts, your audit, your tax, your corporate law, all of that stuff, okay? If you like advising clients, and you like to move from one client to the other client, if you like advising clients, you want clients to come to you with some complex questions and you do the study and you do the research and then advise the clients, right? If that is something which you're looking for, if you have that deep interest to become an expert, whether it's accounting standards, whether it is statutory audit, whether it is GST, or whether it is direct taxes, transfer pricing, whatever it may be, right? So if you have some deep interest to become an expert, if these are some of the indicators that you can relate to, then the consulting space is for you. Okay? Typically, you start here as an associate or something like that and keep growing up to the ranks of becoming a partner, senior partner. Yeah, the consulting space is for you. Now, on the industry side, not everything may relate to your chartered accountancy subjects. You need to have a commercial bent of mind, slightly be ready to move away with chartered accountancy, move away from chartered accountancy subjects, because not everything may circle around accounts, audit, and tax. Okay, there could be some commercial aspects like FP&A, like financial planning analysis. It could be budgeting, forecasting, profitability analysis, capex evaluations, management commentaries. So all of these things also form part of a chartered accountant's role. Although none of this is taught to you in your chartered accountancy, like a budgeting, forecasting, all theoretical stuff you might have studied in your chartered accountancy, but the actual practical application is completely different and something which you need to learn on the job as well. So on the industry side, what might actually happen is that 90 to 95% of your chartered accountancy syllabus may immediately sound redundant. While you will be able to use it at some point in time in your careers, right? But immediately it may sound redundant. Immediately your work may feel something very different. Okay, like for example, my first role, I joined Bharat Petroleum as assistant manager finance, and my first role was pricing of industrial fuels. We had, apart from the regular petrol, diesel, the company was selling about 80 odd products, okay, industrial products, which we used to sell to other conglomerates like Reliance or other larger companies, L&T, and all the manufacturing units. So for these 80 products, what we need to do is every 15 days, we need to monitor the international pricing trends, which we used to get reports from. And based on those international pricing trends, we need to update our pricing for these products and upload it in the system. So that was my first role. Absolutely nothing to do with chartered accountancy. Okay, but I see no other professional in the industry apart from chartered accountants or cost accountants doing this kind of a role. Okay, although none of this will be taught to you in your chartered accountancy, but you are expected to pick up on the job. You are expected to, blend yourself in the real world and come out of books as soon as possible. So don't get suddenly disturbed if your role does not sound like accounting standards or TDS or 26 AS reconciliation and all of that stuff, right? It might sound very different on the industry side. That's okay. That's okay. You're expected to do it. You're expected to blend yourself and learn, right? So if you're okay to move away slightly from the CA subjects, if you have a commercial bent of mind, if you have deep interest in business management, because that's what your function will overlap, you will end up interacting with a lot of cross-functional teams. Like in my role in Bharat Petroleum, the industrial pricing one, I used to deal with a lot of sales team members, right, or the territory managers to understand what's the requirement of the customer, how do we give attractive discounts to land the customer, all of these things, right? So it has nothing to do with chartered accountancy, it was more towards business management. And so if you have that kind of a blend, okay, then I would say industry space is for you. Okay, so now you have to take a call. After this session, spend some quiet time with yourself and see which one do you relate yourself with, and then you can take a call as to whether consulting space is for you or industry space is for you. The next question is that, okay, if I decide to join industry, okay, what are the different kind of profiles available out there, okay, in a large finance organization? Let's say I'm talking about an L&T or an Aditya Birla Group or an ITC, okay, or a Bharat Petroleum. So all of these large companies, or an Infosys, Wipro for that matter, right? All these large companies, what are the different kind of profiles available out there and which is good for me, right? So let me give you an idea. In any large business house or a conglomerate, okay, there are three broad buckets of finance and accounting roles. Three broad buckets. While there could be, the roles could be hundreds and thousands of different kind of roles, but we can group them into three broad buckets. Okay. Now, what are those three broad buckets? First one is your financial reporting and compliance oriented bucket. The second one is business finance or finance business partner or FP&A related bucket. And the third one is specialty finance function, which cannot be really clubbed in. The other two will get classified as specialty finance function. Okay. The first bucket handles all your accounting, compliance, reporting, taxes, and everything, right? So the typical activities may involve preparing financials, notes to accounts, handling statutory tax and internal audits, statutory compliances, tax returns, consolidation of accounts, regulatory reporting. Like, for example, if you join a bank, then RBI may have its own set of regulatory reporting. Right? Or if you join an NBFC, then again, you may have a certain set of specific reporting to RBI. So all those things, all those compliance and reporting stuff gets classified in this particular bucket. Okay. Now, as a qualified chartered accountant, you have a fair understanding of this bucket. You might have seen financials in your articleship. You might have prepared notes to accounts in your articleship. You might have handled statutory tax audits in your articleship. You might have done bank audits in your articleship, right? So you have a fair understanding of this particular compliance bucket. The second bucket is all related to management reporting. It's all related to commercial stuff, and it's all about supporting the business. The theme of this bucket is to support the business, to run the business effectively. Okay. Now, what are some of the typical activities that are involved in this particular kind of a bucket or role, right? One is your budgeting, that is preparing an annual business plan or preparing an annual budget and see how, what kind of revenue and margins the company is expected to make over the year. Forecasting and monitoring your budget on a regular basis and see how you're progressing, right? Like, for example, if you're looking at a 12-month budget, after 3 months, progressing after 3 months during the year, you can say that 3 months is actuals and the rest 9 months is forecast. Okay, so now you see what is the forecasted revenue compared to the budget. Similarly, you end up doing a lot of analysis. It could be revenue, cost, margin, a lot of profitability, different kind of profitability analysis. Like when I was back in Bharat Petroleum, we used to do product-wise profitability analysis. Later on, when I joined a service-oriented company, advertising company, we used to do customer-level profitability. Right? Depending on the kind of company that you're working, you'll end up doing working on different kind of profitabilities. Right? Customer profitability, product profitability, regional profitability, branch profitability. There could be 100 different kind of profitabilities that you might be working on. Management commentaries. Again, you close the month. The management would like to see the performance of the business and understand the reason for variances. So you prepare management commentaries and send them. Working capital management, your debtors, your creditors, your bank line of credit, your vendor financing, your supply chain finance, and all of that. Then CapEx, evaluating CapEx proposals. You want to expand, you want to bring up a new plant, you want to set up a new branch. How do you justify whether it's worth it to do that, right? Evaluating CapEx proposals. Contracts, especially in service companies, let's say, for example, an Infosys, there might be a lot of stress on client contracts, right? Because the client contracts has all the details, the terms, the milestones, how do you recognize revenue, what is the billable rate, how do you bill a particular software engineer at what rate. So many things are deeply involved in contracts, right? Again, a finance team's inputs are required to finalize contracts. Pricing of your product, services. Recharges, this is basically some of the common costs could be incurred by a central group company or one division, which is then recharged into other group companies or other divisions within the same company. So these are some of the kind of activities that are in the second bucket, that is the business partnering or the FP&A kind of a bucket. Now, note down here that you might not get experience of these things during your articleship, and nobody has, right? Unless you're working in industrial training and you have got certain exposure on these things, you will not get to work on these kind of roles. But you are expected to know. You are expected to pick up budgeting. You are expected to pick up forecasting. You are expected to pick up profitability analysis, right? On the job. That's how it is expected from you, right? So you have a fair understanding of bucket number one. But for bucket number two, it's all experiential learning. So you have to keep an open mind and absorb all of this. Now, don't go back and say that I was not taught budgeting in my chartered accountancy. Yeah, not everything will be taught to you in your academics. You need to learn things on the job. You need to blend yourself as per the requirements of the role. Okay. Then there is a third bucket, that is the expert task. That is, these are some specialty functions. Again, not exhaustive, but I'll give you some examples here. It could be treasury or banking relationships. It could be forex management. Okay, large conglomerates might have this. Like for example, when I was back in Bharat Petroleum, we had a very large treasury team which used to manage about $18,000 to $19,000 of 19,000 crores of payments every day. Yeah, because we used to import crude oil in bulk, and that used to form the majority of the payments, the foreign payments as well. Forex management, which means that if you have to make foreign payments, you will require a dedicated team who understands hedging, and we hedge certain forex exposures and take certain profitable positions as well. Mergers and acquisitions, again, if it's a large conglomerate, there'll be a separate mergers and acquisitions team whose task is to identify certain companies, target companies, propose certain acquisitions, joint ventures, all of those stuff. Right? Fundraising, investment management. Again, if your company has surplus funds, then you liaise with the consultants or portfolio managers to manage investments. Structured finance. This is again a very interesting field. Again, in very, very large global conglomerates, you'll see a structured finance function, which basically evaluates the tax impact of different markets and tells you how to structure your group in a better way. Like for example, in UK, the tax might be 30-40%, but in Singapore, it might be 12%. Okay. So how do we now structure our organization at a global level in such a way that the overall tax impact, the global tax impact is reduced, the average tax impact is reduced? So that's about structured finance. Again, strategy, in different types of strategy, financial strategy, marketing strategy, there could be so many different kind of strategies available. Supply chain finance, over the last 15-20 years, this has emerged as a very important function, that where you look at the entire supply chain in your company and come up with some innovative products where your suppliers, will be able to get cheaper finance. If they get cheaper finance, they can pass it on that benefit to you, and you can in turn pass it on to your customer and be competitive in the market. Right? It has emerged as a very good field. Project finance, again, depending on certain large projects, how do you arrange for finance of those projects and then manage the entire see through that entire project till completion. Then there are technology profiles, like you can join as a functional consultant for SAP, where you act as a bridge. You have the finance knowledge, and there's a coder as well, and then there's a business guy as well. Now you act as a bridge between the two. You have enough process knowledge and to understand the financial impact of certain business transactions, right? So you act as a bridge between the business and the coder. Like you want like your business guy tells you that they want to see a certain profitability. Now you help them, you guide them, and you come up with certain requirements which you tell the engineer, and then he'll code it for you. He'll customize it for you. That's the role of a functional consultant. You bring in your domain knowledge and act as a bridge between the business and the technology. So those are some of the technology profiles. No matter in which company you go, okay, you will find one or the other variation of these three buckets. Okay. Now, the most common, like if you're working in a mid-sized kind of an organization, let's say 50 crore, 100 crore, 500 crore turnover. Yeah. So you are most likely to be in a blended kind of a role where you're handling a little bit of compliance also, where you're handling a little bit of FP&A also, you're handling a little bit of treasury also, right? You're likely to be in a blended kind of a role. But if you're working with a very large conglomerate, okay, then you will have clear distinction that there'll be a separate FP&A department. There'll be a separate treasury department. There'll be a separate M&A department. Okay. But if you're working with a mid-sized kind of an organization, then you may not find that clearer distinction. Okay. Again, depending on which kind of an organization you're working with, but largely this is what you will get. Now, a question might be running in your mind, like which profile is the best? Okay. Now all these are options available. Now, which profile do I get into? See, it doesn't matter which profile you get into. You have to understand that by the time you become a senior finance professional, let's say a CFO or something like that, okay, you would have at least worked in 5 or 6 different kind of departments, some in compliance, some in commercial, some in FP&A, some in specialty, right? Because when you become that senior professional, let's say you become a CFO of a large company, you don't have a choice. You can't pick and choose. You can't say, hey, Mr. GST, don't report to me. I don't like GST. Right? You don't have a choice. The tax head is going to report to you. The accounts guy is going to report to you. The FP&A guy is going to report to you. Everybody is going to report to you, right? So it is always good to work in 4 or 5 different functions over the period of your career, 15-20 year career, so that when you reach that senior position, you know what happens in other functions. Okay, so no matter where you start with, you might start with a compliance bucket, and later on, after 4 or 5 years experience, you might move to the business finance bucket, or later on you might get some experience in treasury, so you take that experience as well. You need everything. There's no one best profile that you can keep doing for like 25 years. There's no one best profile, unfortunately. Okay, unless you want to be a subject matter expert. Moving on. Now, like I said, your traditional chartered accountancy or cost accountancy or ACCA, whatever it is, it will give a fair understanding of this bucket number one. Okay, but for bucket number two, you have to learn something on your own. You have to pick up things on the job. Okay, so I have tried to bridge some gap, okay, by creating courses around these topics, around this function, this bucket, so that at least it will give you the blend of both. You know, what happens after you join an organization, and if you come across these kind of activities, you know, you'll suddenly start feeling that, okay, this is different, you know, this is not related to chartered accountancy. Am I in the right profile? All these kind of questions might start popping up in your mind, and these kind of questions came to me as well, okay, when I was starting my career. So you can go to my website. Okay, you can check out these two free courses. It's called Consulting to Industry, or you can also check out Transition from Audit Firm to Finance Function, where I've given a fair understanding of what happens in finance function and what are the kind of mindset shift or mindset prep that you require to work, especially in a finance function of a large conglomerate. Okay, or if you want some advanced coaching as well, you can check out the course Industry Plus. Okay, here I've covered everything: fundamentals of FP&A, business partnering, thinking beyond compliance. You know, how do you build cross-functional relationships within your organization? How do you advance in your career, in your finance career within a large company? All of those things I've covered in this particular course. You can use the coupon code IP2020 and avail a 15% off if you're interested. But I would recommend this only after you kind of join somewhere, start getting your salary, settle down. You know, there's no hurry to do this course, but it would be good if you do it, because especially if you're working on the industry side, because it will give you a fair understanding, okay, of how things are on the industry side, and it will really help you plan your career and understand things better. Moving on, the next question that you might have is that, you know, how is it to work in a KPO or an outsourcing or a global shared services setup? You know, I get these funny calls, almost 1 or 2 calls every week, of people working in these Deloitte USI or EY GDS and all of this, and they say, so people are telling me that if I work in Deloitte USI, my career is over. I say, how can that be possible? I mean, is Deloitte USI doing something completely out of this world? Are they accounting for somebody in Mars, or what is it that they're doing? Right? So always remember one thing: you have to rely and you have to be confident about the fundamentals. Okay, by fundamentals I mean that no matter in shared services or in outsourcing industry, you might be working on international setup, an international client. Like you might be working on accounting for a South African company. You might be working on supporting an audit of a US company, something like that. But the fundamentals will not remain. Fundamentals will not change. No? Will an AR aging be prepared differently in India and Australia? No, right? Will gross profit be computed differently in India and Europe? No, right? So you have to back yourself on the fundamentals. So now let us look at some of the pros and cons of working in a global shared services setup. Okay, what are the pros? First of all, it's a very fast growing industry. Over the last 25 years, okay, the industry has grown massively and has created a lot of opportunities, and more companies are trying to come to India to set up their back office and global shared services setup. Okay, so it's futuristic. If you look at the median age of the globe, okay, it's coming down in other countries. Okay, so India is going to be the youngest country by 2025, which means that more and more countries are facing this issue of proper workforce. They don't have the people to do the tasks, right? So more and more work is coming to India. It will get outsourced to India and the other centers like Philippines or, you know, Uruguay as well, right? So all of these things are going to happen. It's futuristic. For the next 15 years, outsourcing industry is going to grow rapidly, very rapidly. Okay, so this might present some great opportunities for you to quickly rise to become a manager or a senior manager or an EVP, VP, you know. So be open-minded about it. It's fast growing. The second advantage is that cross-cultural exposure. Like even when I was working in a global shared services of a commodity trading company, I used to interact with so many people from, you know, different countries. Like I have interacted with people from more than 20 countries. You know? My boss was actually, from Austria, and he was actually based in Netherlands. You know, one of my other line managers was from Amsterdam, right? So it was you will get that cross-cultural exposure, and it's fun to work with all of these people, if you look at it that way. You might get some on-site opportunities. Like I said, since more and more work is going to come to India, you might get some transition opportunities where you will spend 6 months in a European country to transition all the processes to India, and then you come back and take charge of that role. A lot of my friends did this. They spent time in Amsterdam, they spent time in Africa, they spent time in Poland, Finland, US, everywhere as well, right? So you might end up getting a lot of on-site opportunities also. It could be for a brief period. Again, higher average pay at a junior to mid-level. Compared to a traditional setup, the outsourcing industry is able to pay a little bit more because you are solving a different problem. To hire a fresh accountant, let's say a fresh CPA in US, it might cost $50,000. Here you will get probably five chartered accountants in that cost, right? Who can be equally good, right? So it's slightly higher average pay in the outsourcing setup overall, if you look at it. Again, technologically advanced, because the setup is so large, because the focus is on remote working, any new latest technological development, it could be on the ERP side or business intelligence tool or automation tool or robotic process automation, artificial intelligence, any new technological advancement, there is a chance, there's a likelihood that it gets first implemented in these shared services centers, because your goal is to automate, your goal is to try and reduce the mundane tasks as much as possible. And of course, these shared services provide a lot of volume as well, because you're actually handling transactions for 100 countries, 150 countries, depending on the kind of setup you are in. Again, access to regional global roles. I have seen a lot of people who were like at the manager level, in the mid-level, and then who got a chance to go and join senior manager in a regional office in Singapore. Okay. Or I've seen many people move to a global role in US, right? So these are also the kind of opportunities that are available with you. Okay. Again, right now the shared services setup is no longer restricted to only accounting and back office functions. So a lot of business partnering, the finance business partnering roles are increasingly being outsourced to India as well. So if you look at the setup that I was working in, okay, we used to do budgeting, forecasting, variance analysis, profitability analysis, all of that stuff, which is really FP&A stuff, which has a lot of business interaction, okay, which we used to do sitting here. Gone are those days where only all the back office related accounting entries or the routine voluminous stuff was going to be outsourced to India. No, people have now realized that, okay, here you can get resources to do FP&A function also. Here you can get resources to do finance business partnering as well. Here you can get resources to do commercial stuff as well. So in all these shared services, the finance business partnering or commercial roles are also increasing day by day. So it doesn't mean that if you join a shared services, you will end up only doing accounting entries or you're only doing back office functions, right? You might end up interacting with business as well, okay, if you're lucky. So these are some of the pros of working in an outsourcing setup. Okay, the outsourcing industry, independently, if you look at it, there's nothing wrong with it. Okay, and it is growing, and you might get a lot of chance to move, okay, within the setup as well. Now let's look at some of the disadvantages of working in a global shared services center. You might lose touch with local taxes unless you get that a different high of working with those 26 years reconciliation and TDS and GST returns and 3B and whatnot, GSTR1 and all of that stuff. Unless you get some extreme high with working with those taxes, okay, then you have to stick to an Indian setup. If not, then it's okay if you lose touch with those taxes. In any case, you are not going to work on them, right? Again, you might slightly move away from your chartered accountancy curriculum. You might have studied Ind AS and accounting standards. There you might have to work on US GAAP. Okay, so you can slightly move away from a chartered accountancy curriculum, but that's okay. Even in a traditional Indian setup, Indian company, there is a probability that you will never ever use 95% of what you have studied in your chartered accountancy. Okay, that's the reality. So bookish days are over. Theoretical stuff is over now. Get ready for the practical real life. Internal client interaction. Now here it might happen that, let's say if you're working in an outsourcing setup of an audit firm, let's say a Deloitte USI, and you're actually supporting the on-site audit team, for auditing a certain particular client, here you may not end up directly interacting with the client, but instead there'll be an internal client interaction where somebody who's a manager sitting out of US will be interacting with you, who's actually conducting the audit locally there, right? That might be a slight disadvantage. But having said that, still, again, in a different it depends on the shared services. There are so many different shared services where you interact with business as well. Okay, like for example, I know one shared services here of an oil and gas company, and my friend who's working there, she interacts with the business teams of Malaysia, Thailand, Singapore, and all of that stuff as well, right? So it doesn't mean that really you will not get to interact. You will get to interact with external clients as well. At times, there might be lesser business visibility, especially this might happen at junior roles because you don't understand the entire structure. You don't understand where you are fitting in the entire structure. You might not get that overall picture. Okay, you might not get that complete picture. Like unlike when you are going for an audit of a large company, okay, you understand, okay, what is the structure of that company. But when you're actually working in a very large global kind of a setup, okay, it takes some time for you to figure out, okay, where are you actually fitting in that big structure? Are you on the business side? Are you on the shared services side? Are you on the accounting side, or are you on the commercial side? And it takes some time to figure out that visibility. At junior levels, you might face that issue that you might not have a visibility, but eventually you will figure out. These are some of the slight pros and cons of working in a global outsourcing setup. Now, you might have this most popular question that I get. I get asked question. Like I said, I get calls at least, from 2 people every week to understand that if I get into Deloitte USA or if I get into this EY GDS, will I ever be able to come out? What is it? Some kind of a dark cave that you will not be able to figure out your way from there? Like, you will always be able to come out. Remember my words. You will be able to go in and come out of any company, any profile at any time. Trust yourself on that. Okay? So don't worry too much about it. Okay? Even if you work in, let's say, I'm giving you an example of Deloitte USA. Let's say you work for 3 years in Deloitte USA. What are your options, right? You might end up in a job in a traditional setup, okay, where you might have to suddenly catch up with local taxes because you have lost touch with those. Possibility number 1. Possibility number 2, there are other shared services centers as well. Like, for example, after working for 3 years in Deloitte USA, you get an opportunity as manager finance in global shared services of Shell. Okay, Shell, which is an oil and gas company, right? Okay, that option is also available. Okay, so many companies have put their shared services center in India, right? You might get your options there. Okay, or the other option number 3 is that you move from one big 4 outsourcing setup to another big 4 outsourcing setup at a higher level. You join as an AVP or a VP or something like that, right? That is also possible. So your options will never end. Stop thinking that these are dead end. These are not. These are very good, futuristic, lucrative opportunities if you look at them independently. Okay, so think well and then take a call. Okay, now again, like I said, I've given you a broad picture of what industry is all about, what are the different kind of companies, roles available out there. Okay, now I want to give you something very important. So be open for opportunities. Okay, and I want to share some case studies with you here. See, in a traditional CA firm, the path is very, very clear. You are able to see the end goal. Like, you start as a classic associate or a senior or something like that, and you are going to become a manager, senior manager, AD, VP, partner, senior partner someday in a big 4, right? Let's say typically if you're working in a big 4 or a large firm, you have this visibility, you know the end goal. Okay, but as opposed to that, on the industry side, you don't know the end goal. You don't know whether you will become a CFO, CEO, CEO, or you might end up starting your own business. You don't know the end point, but that's okay. That's completely okay. Nobody knows their end point on day 1. Okay, so you have to look at your career in blocks of 2 to 3 years. What do you want to do for the next 24 to 36 months? See where that takes you, and then build your next step. Again, work for 24, 36 months and see where that takes you, and then build your next step. Okay, and I'm going to share some case studies here with you. Okay. My friend, okay, from my the same firm where I did my articleship, started as a payroll officer in a very large software company, in a mid-sized software company. Okay, about 4,000 employees. Okay. He started as a payroll officer. Okay, and this company was very rapidly expanding, and they had set up a US subsidiary. And somebody who was very happy with his job, and it was 10-minute walking distance from him, and he used to always tell me that, boss, I got the dream job and I'm going to retire from here only. I'm not going to do anything else now. Okay, he used to keep telling me this. He was offered an opportunity to move to US, okay, to set up that US subsidiary along with the general manager. Okay, and he thought about it, and not everybody gets this kind of opportunity. So he grabbed it with both hands. Okay, he did well. He spent a few years there. 10 years down the line, today, he is the COO of that US subsidiary, which is a well over $200 million of turnover. COO of that US subsidiary. Again, somebody who I know started as accounts officer in Bharat Petroleum. That is the classic thing that you start with. I also started as accounts officer, then moved to assistant manager, and then whatever, right? So classic role where you start somewhere as an accounts officer in Bharat Petroleum. She became, over a period of 20 years, remember, she became director HR. Now, can you imagine chartered accountant becoming a director HR, right? Of course, the management trusted her instincts. The management trusted her with certain kind of roles, and they groomed her. They gave her certain opportunities in such a way that she was able to groom herself to become director HR over a 20-year period. Okay, accounts officer to director HR. Somebody who I know who started with a classic role, audit associated EY. There can't be a classic way to start your career than this, right? Audit associated EY. Today, okay, he is the group CEO, mark my words, group CEO of an advertising company, $1 billion advertising company. Okay, it's not that he's a CFO, he's a CEO of a advertising company. Okay, so he understands advertising as well as any other advertising guy would understand. Somebody who I know who started as a classic associate at the then firm Arthur Andersen, right? Again, audit associate, classic firm, classic way to start your career. Okay. Today, he is a group CEO of a $1 billion software company, which is basically into payroll management softwares and other compliance softwares. Yeah. So you understand this? Did all of them know, that they would become this? No, right? They wouldn't know. When I joined Bharat Petroleum, which was my first job, I didn't know I would become CFO of an advertising company. I didn't know that. Right? So don't try and seek for a 15, 20-year clarity, or don't try and ask your seniors questions like, which profile is the best? Tell me which profile is the best. No, there's no such thing as best profile. It depends on how you keep growing, how you keep working. Right? So you have to take your career step by step. Think about 2 to 3 years, and then slowly see where it takes you. Okay, I'm sure all of you have the potential to become senior exec someday. Right? So this is what I wanted to stress on. Be open for opportunities. Don't try and build unnecessary biases that, okay, only M&A is really good. So what? I mean, like, okay, mergers and acquisitions, you join mergers and acquisitions. Are you going to do mergers and acquisitions for 20 years? No, right? You will do it for 2-3 years and get bored there. What next? Right? Over my 11 years of career, okay, I have done everything. I have done a mergers and acquisitions assignment. I have worked with the management consulting firm McKinsey on an assignment. Okay, I have seen GST implementation. Right, I have seen an ERP implementation. So more or less, if you spend time in industry, you will get more or less every experience. Not that this experience is good or that experience is good. Right? So be patient and wait for your turn. Okay. So that's what I wanted to stress upon. Keep an open mind. Whatever opportunity you get, grab it with both hands. Be sincere towards it and learn as much as you can, and then plan your next step. Cool. So this is what I wanted to cover. I do want to keep some time for questions, so I'm just going to stop sharing my screen, and so that we all can see each other and interact as well. Okay. I hope you found this session insightful, and if you guys have any questions, feel free to ask me now.
Hi, thank you for such an insightful session. It was really helpful. I just had one query. I was looking for various roles for FP&A profile, but whatever vacancies I came across, most of them asked for 2 to 3 years work experience.
Right.
So, how do I start in a role in which I have no experience when they are not even taking freshers? Yeah.
Yeah. So see, there are two ways to do it. Okay. One is try and land a business finance role. Okay. That's number one. It could be, see, if you're targeting a very large company, okay, where there is a separate dedicated FP&A department, it might slightly become difficult because they always prefer experienced people. If you're able to target a mid-size MNC, let's say there's a US company, big US company, but they have a small setup in India, which is about 100 crore to 500 crore turnover. Okay. And you join as finance manager there or something like that. Then there your role could be pretty blended. You are handling a little bit of accounting also, a little bit of FP&A also, a little bit of commercial finance as well. So in those kind of roles, you get that FP&A exposure by default. In many companies, it is not called as FP&A, but you still have that FP&A experience. In whichever company I have worked with, we never had an FP&A department, but all my roles had FP&A elements in it. Okay, so that could be your chance of try and getting a blended role first, and then eventually transition into a FP&A department of a large company.
Got it. Thank you.
Hi, Devalsal, this is Roshan here.
Yes, Roshan.
That's a very insightful session. Thanks for that, first of all. Currently, I'm working in Haribhakti as a officer taxes and international tax and transfer pricing division. And I got a chance to move to Pune in the KPMG for transfer pricing only. So I didn't know about the industry very well before, as you clearly mentioned. My question is just that if I get a good exposure for 2-3 years in transfer pricing, and as you said, as you mentioned very well, that I might get bored after that. So how can I switch from a specific, it's like specialization area to a generic area if I want to after 2-3 years?
Right. That's a great question. So see, transfer pricing is something which is very, very super specific. Okay, unless you want to, become a transfer pricing expert and grow to the ranks of becoming a partner, it's worth continuing in transfer pricing. Otherwise, you should try and move out after a couple of years as soon as possible. Okay, that's number one. Now, how do you move? Okay, there are two ways to do it. One is you, again, like I said, you try for a blended role in a smaller company, which is like a finance manager role where there is a little bit of accounting as well, where there's a little bit of taxes as well. Okay, so you try for a blended role. That's number one. Or number two, you try for roles in international taxation in larger companies. Okay, let's say, for example, you try for a role in international taxation in L&T. Okay, so once you get into L&T, work for a couple of years, then you should try and pitch for a transfer to some other department. It could be an accounts department, it could be FP&A, it could be commercial finance. Right? Try and pitch for some other department. So you can actually make your international taxation experience as a bridge to transition over to the industry and then move out to a separate profile. That would be your plan B if you're not able to directly land a finance manager kind of a role.
Thank you, Devalsal. That's it. Thank you.
Cool. Any more questions? Any more doubts about career path, about profiles? Yeah.
Sir, this is Satyanarayan.
Yes.
Like I've just cleared my exams in July, got a rank as well. So like during my articleship, I've done internal audits, forensic audits, and some bit of management consultancy, that types, and I've also done ICOFR, RCM testing and all. So I'd like to go into profiles like where, I mean, in some like a consulting profile is also fine, or in a big company like an internal audit department where that data analytics and stuff is like that. I also like that kind of a profile, but I'm not sure how to proceed, sir, because in case of management consultancy, it would be advisable that you do an MBA after getting 2 years of work experience or something like that. So I'm just not sure like how to proceed, sir.
Oh, see, again, internal audit is a very good field. I mean, so in internal audit, you will be getting a lot of vacancies. Okay, in larger conglomerates, they do prefer people to start with internal audits and then they move them to different kind of functions after a couple of years. Okay. As far as management consulting is concerned, that's a slightly difficult area, I would say. Even with your rank, you may have to take that chance of trying to reach out the HR or some seniors who are already working there and try and get some reference, right? Because otherwise, getting into these management consulting firms is very difficult. Even if you get into these management consulting firms, don't expect something very great. It's going to be a similar associate analyst kind of a profile only, right? Because even if you join management consultancy, don't expect that you will be rubbing shoulders with CEOs and CFOs and telling them how to do their business. That is not what management consultancy is, right? So having said that, I think since you have a rank, I think your best bet would be campus. Trying to give campus interview first, because there you might be selected by different companies, and then naturally, if you tell them in the interview that your choice would be something like an internal audit or something commercial, you might get a chance to work in those kind of organizations.
Okay. So like even if you're starting with an industry in a big company, such as an internal audit role, and then if I do MBA, then would that be an edge for management consultancy?
See, again, there's no one straightforward formula, right? So let's say even if you do MBA from IIM Ahmedabad, Okay.
Mm-hmm.
What if that happens to be a bad year and none of the management consultancies come to the campus for that year? Yeah.
Okay.
So it really depends on a lot of things. There's no one straightforward formula to get into management consulting. But yes, MBA from an Ivy League B school does increase your chances of getting into them.
Okay. But the thing is, like, I don't want to do MBA just for the sake of getting into a management consultancy firm. I also haven't been to college, so I want to get that kind of experience, soft skills. I want to develop my
Yeah,
soft
sure.
skills and all, and contacts.
Yeah,
So
absolutely. I
these.
mean, absolutely. Give it a shot. I mean, definitely. If MBA from top 10 B schools, if you're able to manage that, if you're able to pull it off, nothing like it. I mean, it will definitely give you an edge, and it will really broaden your horizon, the kind of profiles that you want to target.
Okay. Okay. Thank you so much.
Hi, sir.
Yes, Vedika.
Yeah, great session, first of all. Actually, I am someone who's interested to work abroad. So
Mm-hmm.
I've just passed out my CA exams in July. I just wanted to ask whether the profile that I choose, be it like consulting firm or the industry, the profile I choose, will it affect like if I want to go outside India? And also, I wanted to know about the courses that I should approach or I should do so that it will
Yeah.
give me an edge there.
Okay. See, as far as experience is concerned, if you are able to work with a familiar company, that makes your life a little bit easier. Like, for example, if you are able to take up a job in Big Fours, everybody knows Big Fours in the world. No matter where you go, in which corner of the world, everybody understands what is Big Four, right? So that would make your life slightly easier as compared to that if you're ending up working in, I don't know, Indian Oil, right? People may or may not see that as equivalent to a Big Four. So if you have plans to move abroad, then work with a brand which has international recognition. Now it could be Amazon, now it could be PwC, it could be IBM, right? Some brand which has international presence and recognition. That's number one. That's step number one. Step number two, as far as courses are concerned, again, it depends on the kind of market that you want to target. See, working abroad is not something which is like, if I don't get in Canada, I'll get a consolation prize of working in, I don't know, Ireland or something like that.
Yeah, right.
It's not going to be that straightforward. So you have to target the market. Let's say if you select Canada as a market, for example, then your best bet is to do CPA Canada immediately.
Yeah,
Yeah. Similarly, if you
right.
are targeting Australia as a market, then maybe you try and do CPA Australia first.
Okay, I actually my like, main target is New Zealand, but I was told that CPA USA has more recognition, so you should go for
No,
that.
I don't think so. Then probably you should go for CPA Australia.
Okay,
That would probably have more recognition there if New Zealand is your target market.
okay, yeah,
Yeah, CPA US is good any day, so that's not a problem. But since you already have ICI already has a MOU with CPA Australia, and why not leverage that and first complete your CPA Australia? And if you still feel the need after going there, you can do US CPA.
okay, yeah, okay. Thank you.
Dhaval sir, I just have one more question. If you allow me, I can ask.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. Dhaval sir, I just completed 7 months in Hari Bhakti now. It's like I have just.
Uh-huh.
It's like as I already mentioned that I have an opportunity to work in Pune KPMG. So will
Right.
that affect my resume that I am leaving the job in 7 months? Because why I'm leaving is I was promised to get work like international tax and transfer pricing, and most of my works are compliance related work, and MCA and FMA compliance
No,
related work. So that's my question.
as long as you have a proper justification of why you are leaving,
Mm-hmm.
it should not
Mm-hmm.
affect your resume. But however, I would just recommend that the next role that you take up at least continue for 2-3 years, because see, not just for your resume, it will in 7-8 months the learning will not be the same, right? What it will be in 3 years. The cumulative learning in 2-3 years will be much more higher than the first 6 months. That's always going to be the case. And so wherever you join next, make sure you stick around at least for 2 to 3 years.
Dhaval, thank you, sir. Thanks a lot for that.
Yes. Any more questions? Yes, Archit, I see that you have raised your hand. Archit, I think you're on mute. Archit, I see that you have raised your hand. So if you have any question, please feel free to unmute yourself and then ask the question. Okay. Cool. Any other questions, guys?
Hi, I had already asked the question, and this one is a bit specific. So, like Satyanarayan told, I also have my articleship experience purely in internal audit and risk assessment. And in the future, like 2 to 3 years down the line, I want to really want to pursue my MBA from one of the Ivy League colleges. So, right
Okay.
now, what profile should I go for, which would really help me in my which would be more relevant for my MBA in the long run?
No, I think any profile would do. So see, of course, it shouldn't be in taxes or transfer pricing or any of this,
Mhm.
right? Because that's not your target. Right?
Right.
So anything apart from that would be still good. Right?
Actually, internal
See,
audit made
after
sense
your
because I
MBA,
got an
everything is going to
overview.
change.
Yeah, internal
See,
audit
after
made
your
sense.
MBA,
Hmm. Yeah, please.
yeah, internal audit makes complete sense because there you will get to understand the business. Also, you will see a lot
Mhm.
of processes as well. If
Right.
you work for a couple of years in internal audit, that will still be good from an MBA standpoint.
Mhm.
Okay, and anyhow, after MBA, everything is going to change because whatever you're studying in your chartered accountancy will all take a backseat, and then maybe what you have studied in your MBA becomes more prominent.
Mhm. Right. Thank you.
Hi, Dhaval sir, can I ask a question?
Yes, yes, love.
Uh, so it's a wonderful session. So I had a question like I just joined Big Four outsourcing unit. So like just prior to joining this, I had a 1 month stint somewhere at internal audit. So should I
Mhm.
include that in my CV? Because people say ki 1 month stint and all should not be written in the CV. We want to.
See again, it depends on the kind of profile that you want to target. If that experience that you have got in 1 month, makes some contribution to the kind of role that you are targeting, then include it. Otherwise, skip it.
Thank you.
Okay, so Shimona has a question, continuing to Vedika's question about working abroad. What should be my approach to seek an opportunity in the Middle East? Um, Again, there's nothing specific. Chartered accountants have transitioned over to Middle East in roles. Again, my take would be that you try and target a role there in Big Four through your contacts. Okay, if you get into audit department in Dubai or something like that, in one of the Big Fours, that can be your entry ticket into the Middle East. And once you get a grip of the Middle East market, then you can move over to the industry side. Getting into Big Fours or any of these bigger firms, is slightly easier compared to getting into a completely unknown company. Yeah. Any other questions, guys? You guys asked great questions. I'm happy to see the participation. Don't worry too much, okay? Take it step by step. Take your career step by step. Now that I understand that this is a very important phase. Okay. Agrima has a question. Statutory audit in Big Four. Should I move from Big Four to Big Four or some corporate? And it completely depends on you. If you have got some good articleship exposure, I would say that you can directly start with industry roles. But if you feel that you have not got some great exposure in your articleship, like you ended up filing only individual returns, you're not able to get some exposure about statutory audit, or didn't get a chance to work on a large private company or a listed company. If that is the case in your articleship, then I would recommend that you first do a couple of years in Big Fours, get that kind of an experience and the brand advantage, and then move to the corporate side. Otherwise, if you have decent articleship experience, then directly target industry roles. Right. So if you don't have any more questions, then we can wind up the session here. I hope you guys found it helpful, and I'm around. I'll be available. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn. Okay. All the very best, guys. Don't worry too much. Take it step by step. Okay, and you all are great, and you will get your desired careers. Just be patient. Okay, don't unnecessarily try and seek a 15-20 year clarity. That's not required. Take it step by step. Okay, and keep progressing from one level to the other.